Greetings, true believers, and welcome to another prophetic episode of History of the Marvel Universe. Ravonna Renslayer was born and raised on Earth 6311 in the 40th century. The daughter of King Corellius, Ravonna was the princess of a relatively small kingdom known as Exomitatious, and the rest of this Earth and beyond had already been conquered in this century by the time-traveling warlord known as Kang. However, Kang was smitten by Ravonna's strength and beauty. His vast armies could easily overwhelm the kingdom of Exomitatious, but Ravonna refused to submit to his rule. Kang stayed his wrath, intent on somehow winning the love and respect of the princess. And so he turned his attention outward, conquering every world within 100 light years. Over the following years, planets, dimensions, and timelines were brought to heel. His seat of power was the sprawling city of Chronopolis in the timeless dimension of Limbo, from which Kang could access any timeline under his rule. And still Ravonna refused him, claiming she would never share a throne with someone of ignoble blood. Kang attempted to prove his worth by summoning a team of Avengers from the 20th century and beating them in combat. However, the Avengers refused to concede defeat, as did Princess Ravonna. Enraged, Kang set the might of his armies upon the small kingdom, easily taking it with overwhelming force. With Exomitatious under his control, he demanded that a wedding be prepared for himself and the princess. However, Kang's policy to this point was to slay the leaders of any conquered realm, lest they stoke the fires of rebellion at a later date. His attempt to spare Ravonna's life was seen as weakness by his men. Led by General Baltag, Kang's army was turned against him, and so Kang the Conqueror joined forces with the Avengers to liberate Exomitatious, and Ravonna began to see him in a new light. In the end, Kang regained control and freed Ravonna's kingdom. However, Baltag broke free from capture, procured a weapon, and fired upon Kang. Ravonna, stirred by his bravery in defending her, prevented Kang's assassination by leaping into the line of fire. It seems he had won her respect and perhaps even her love, but it was far too late. Of course, Baltag was gunned down on the spot as well. With Ravonna's injuries too grievous to heal, Kang preserved her in suspended animation, teetering on the precipice of life and death. However, an opportunity to tip the scales presented itself when he was challenged to a game by the Elder of the Universe known as the Grandmaster. Kang would select a group of champions to fight on his behalf, and if they were victorious, he would win the power over life and death. However, if he lost, he would sacrifice both his own life and that of the Earth as well. And so for his champions, Kang chose his own hated enemies, the mighty Avengers. While the Grandmaster crafted villainous facsimiles of heroes from another universe and created the Squadron Sinister. The Avengers defeated the Squadron, but their victory was deemed invalid due to the interference of another hero, the Black Knight. Thus, Kang's victory was a partial one, forcing him to choose life for Ravonna or death for his enemies. In his rage, he chose death for the mighty Avengers. But the Black Knight was not yet an Avenger and was able to strike Kang down before he finished the job. Ironically, it was directly after this battle that the Knight was offered a spot on the team. The Grandmaster departed, but unbeknownst to the others, he did not do so empty-handed. In fact, he took the body of Ravonna Renslayer with him as he returned to his own realm, leaving behind a lifeless duplicate. This was not the end of Kang, and he also battled Thor in an encounter that, from the Thunder God's point of view, occurred before the Grandmaster's contest. Following this battle, Kang was banished to an unfamiliar corner of Limbo where he wandered for an indiscernible amount of time. He eventually came upon the citadel belonging to his own future self, Immortus, who had seemingly died under mysterious circumstances. There, Kang was able to use Immortus's machines to peer through time and observe different timelines. On one screen, he was able to find the moment right before Ravonna Renslayer was shot by Baltag. Acting quickly, Kang teleported the princess into Limbo with him, having plucked her out of that moment in time. A relieved Ravonna embraced Kang, grateful to him for saving her life. However, since Ravonna was removed from that point in time, it was instead Kang who was shot and killed, an event which the Kang in Limbo had no memory of. A divergent timeline. Investigating further, Kang discovered that his careless incursions into the time stream had resulted in many such divergent Kangs. In fact, the Kang who challenged the Grandmaster may have in fact been another Divergent, and not the so-called Kang Prime that brought Ravonna into Limbo. He soon realized that by pulling his alternate selves into Limbo, he could kill them without creating further variants. And so he embarked on a quest to cleanse the multiverse of these duplicates, leaving himself the once and future Kang. However, Kang Prime was not the only one to slay other Kangs, and with so many littering the span of cross-time, a number of Kangs were killed by other beings and their equipment was stolen. Kang Prime succeeded in eliminating the remaining divergent Kangs, but it seems he was being manipulated by Immortus, the older and wiser Kang Prime. Immortus had faked his death and allowed Kang Prime to use his equipment, knowing he would cull the multiverse of the variant Kangs. Furthermore, Ravonna left Kang to stand with Immortus, for he embodied anything that was ever good in Kang. Immortus also possessed a sphere which he claimed gave him power over Limbo. However, this globe contained the memories of all the fallen Kangs, and when Kang Prime attempted to claim it for himself, all of those memories flowed into him, threatening to overwhelm his mind. Kang escaped and survived by intentionally creating another divergence, dividing the stress the globe had put on him. Ravonna, meanwhile, remained with Immortus in Limbo. One of the two remaining Kang variants, the one who successfully absorbed all of the memories and would continue to consider himself Kang Prime, returned to Chronopolis to recover. The other, addled and unaware of his origins, was recruited into the Council of Cross-Time Kangs, an organization of beings from across the multiverse who had killed a Kang and stolen his identity. One of these alternate Kangs was a woman calling herself Nebula, ostensibly a temporal variant of the notorious space pirate. But unbeknownst to the other Kangs, this Nebula was secretly Ravonna Renslayer in disguise. Not the Ravonna who Kang Prime had pulled from the timeline and ultimately decided to stay with Immortus. Kang Nebula was the one who was shot by Baltag and placed in suspended animation. After the game with Kang, the Grandmaster took Ravonna's body and resurrected her. Seeking vengeance on the true Kang, this Ravonna killed and replaced a member of the Council of Cross-Time Kangs. Posing as Nebula, Ravonna seduced several councilmen, learning their secrets and plotting her revenge. She learned that her target, the Prime Kang, was responsible for the creation of the council, but was squirreled away in his inaccessible realm. She also learned that one particular timeline contained a weapon created by a rogue Celestial and was capable of threatening all of cross-time. However, the period in which the weapon existed was surrounded by an impenetrable time bubble. Bending others to her will with stolen technology, Ravonna ensorcelled the mind of the Avenger Dr. Druid. Then, with a combination of future technology and Druid's powers, she was able to enslave several of his teammates. With the Avengers under her control, the fake Nebula attempted to pierce the time bubble and obtain the weapon within. However, Nebula's betrayal was discovered and several Kangs, including the final one to diverge from Kang Prime, gave chase. Clinging to the Avengers Quinjet, the Kangs deactivated the Mindbender technology that she had stolen. This allowed She-Hulk to break free of Nebula's control and damage her Kang armor. She tried to escape, but both she and Dr. Druid were lost in a temporal vortex. In the confusion and turbulence, the Kangs also lost their grip and tumbled into the surrounding chaos. However, Ravonna found a new opportunity when the Fantastic Four decided to investigate the time bubble. From within the temporal vortices, she attempted to use Druid's powers to entrance the mind of Mr. Fantastic while he slept, but his will was too strong. The younger Human Torch, on the other hand, proved to be more susceptible to her manipulations. And so the Fantastic Four joined forces with Thor and Iron Man to successfully penetrate the time bubble, and by possessing the torch, the Ravonna Nebula was able to come along. Not only that, but the three Kangs were able to pursue and enter the bubble as well. But once inside, Ravonna used the possessed Human Torch to murder the Kang who had diverged from Kang Prime. She also discovered the weapon that the Council of Cross-Time Kangs was after, a variant Galactus powered by a black hole that threatened to envelop all of reality. Fortunately, in that timeline, Galactus's ship still contained a weapon of unfathomable power known as the Ultimate Nullifier. The heroes intended to use the Nullifier to stop Galactus, but Ravonna possessed the Invisible Woman and used her force field powers to seize it. However, Mr. Fantastic suspected that something was amiss and had Iron Man place a small capacitor on the Nullifier so that when Ravonna grabbed it, it delivered enough of a shock to allow the Invisible Woman to regain control. And so the FF brought the Ultimate Nullifier to the variant Galactus, who used it to destroy the black hole, the time bubble, and himself. In the wake of this, Ravonna was tossed back into the time stream alongside Dr. Druid. Then, by diving into the center of a raging time storm, she was able to absorb enough chronal energy to break free of their time-tossed prison. Traveling to the year 1961, Ravonna attempted to use her new power to create a timeline where no superheroes existed to stop her. However, Dr. Druid, free of her control, summoned two alternate versions of himself to oppose her and strip her of her power. With the so-called Nebula defeated, Druid was then returned to the time period from which he originated. It seems that Ravonna had joined him in the present as well and later confronted him with a new suit of armor. After much effort, she was able to convince Druid and the Fantastic Four to help her infiltrate Chronopolis and confront Kang. But upon arriving, they encountered a squad of Avengers who sought to free their teammates that had been imprisoned there. By tricking the Avengers into attacking the Fantastic Four, Ravonna was able to escape and pursue her target. The heroes soon realized they had been duped, but were then defeated by Kang's enforcers, the Anachronauts. While Kang gloated to his captive audience, Ravonna took her opportunity to attack, stabbing him in the chest. However, Kang had predicted such an attack, and the one who was slain was merely a decoy. The true Kang Prime then struck his assassin with a ray that disabled her appearance-altering technology, revealing her true identity of Ravonna Renslayer. Impressed by her ruthlessness, Kang challenged his beloved Ravonna to single combat, to which she agreed. Reactivating her armor, Ravonna dubbed herself the Terminatrix and ferociously attacked. Kang and the Terminatrix were evenly matched, but the Avengers broke free and decided to stop them both. Thor threw his hammer, intending to destroy the barrier containing the two, but Mjolnir passed through the force field more easily than expected and hurtled towards Ravonna. Mirroring her earlier sacrifice for him, Kang leapt in front of the attack, allowing the hammer to strike him instead. Her feelings complicated by Kang's sacrifice, the Terminatrix placed his body into suspension just as he had once done to her. Meanwhile, the other Ravonna watched from Immortus's palace, unnerved by the violent actions of her other self. After this, the Terminatrix Ravonna impersonated Kang, ruling Chronopolis and the Council in his stead. Seeking to expand her new empire, she traveled back in time to before Kang's influence began. There she encountered the creature called Alioth, an amorphous being with complete control over the earliest eras in the time stream. And Alioth's encroachment into the future posed a threat to other temporal kingdoms as well. This includes the Empire of Odexus, which holds control over the 5,000-year period following Kang's rule. And so while the Terminatrix returned to Chronopolis, Revelation, the ruler of Odexus, put a plan into effect. First, she plucked 3 Avengers, Thunderstrike, War Machine, and US Agent, out of time and sent them to attack Ravonna in Chronopolis, on the pretense of stopping Kang's return. In turn, the Terminatrix summoned Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America, mentally manipulating them into battling their counterparts. While the Avengers fought each other, Ravonna tracked her attacker's departure point and traveled up time to Odexus. There she was attacked and captured by a man named Marcus Immortus, although not the same Marcus who once abducted Carol Danvers. Terminatrix was held captive alongside several other variant Ravonnas. One who kept the Nebula identity, one who modeled herself after the Grandmaster, one who kept her original appearance, one who wore the armor of Kang, and one who wore an earlier version of the Terminatrix armor. An older version of Immortus explained that he and his Ravonna were nearing the end of their lives and wished to pass on at the same time. He requested that one of the variants switch off his Ravonna's life support as he passed away, unable to ask such a thing of their son Marcus. The Terminatrix volunteered, allowing that version of herself to die peacefully. Then, with Marcus distracted, Terminatrix took her opportunity to escape, only to come face to face with Revelation. As it turns out, Revelation was, in fact, a future version of the Terminatrix and the true mother of Marcus Immortus. It's also implied that the older Terminal Ravonna was the older version of Revelation. It's unclear whether this is literal or if the dying Ravonna was the one that Kang Prime rescued from Baltag, or if that particular Ravonna was one of the captured variants. With time travel involved, she could be both, or neither. But the two remaining Ravonnas we are concerned with from here on are Revelation and Terminatrix. Revelation had lured her past self to the future to warn of the danger that Alioth possessed to both their empires. She explained that the only way to prevent the creature's domination of the time stream was to revive Kang. And so, returning to Chronopolis, Terminatrix used technology from Revelation's time to do just that. However, the two discovered that Alioth had already consumed the entire council of cross-time Kangs. With their timeline in jeopardy as well, the Avengers were convinced to join the fight. Ultimately, it was Kang's agent Tempest, an artificial being created by the future Immortus, who was able to push Alioth back, forming a temporal barrier that kept the creature confined. With the threat having passed, Kang and Terminatrix embraced each other, setting Ravonna on the path to becoming Revelation. However, much to Revelation's shock, Terminatrix denied this fate, stabbing Kang in the back and returning him to his coma. Having diverged herself from Revelation's timeline, Ravonna then traveled to the early 20th century and spent some time with Kang's alter ego in that period. However, she eventually returned to Chronopolis and revived Kang on her own terms. The two ruled Chronopolis together, but Kang was still enemies with his own future self, Immortus. It seems the elder Immortus who died in the future may not actually have been the true Immortus, who is supposed to have no divergent counterparts after taking that identity, but perhaps it was another variant Kang who assumed the role. During the Destiny War, Immortus launched an attack on Chronopolis that destroyed Kang's citadel and took the life of Ravonna Renslayer, and thus the personal timeline of the woman who had been Ravonna, Nebula, Temptress, and Terminatrix came to an end. But as we have seen, other variant Ravonnas remain, including Revelation, who exists in the year 10,000, ruling over the Odexus Empire beyond the scope of Kang's dynasty. And those are the future histories of the woman named Ravonna Renslayer. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe for more marvelous content. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what Marvel hero or villain you want to hear about next, and as always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!